Casa Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Thursday, December 1st, 2022 to order. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Very good. Changes to the agenda?
Roll call. Would you like to do roll call first, Mr. Chair?
No, I really.
Member Aldred.
Here.
Member Vanderhayden.
Here.
Member Hubbard.
Here.
Member Garza.
Here.
Member Peters.
Here.
Member Estrada.
Here.
Vice Chair Benedict.
Here. Kind I was checking stuff off, moving on. I apologize. Now, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there's one technical change, and it's on item number 3. We'd like to change the order that these applications are voted on to change the number 4 and 5, the sequence of those. So the number 4, the major site plan, will be considered last, and the variance, the landscape variance, number 5 will now become number 4 and be considered before the major site plan. So switch the sequencing of number 4 and 5 on item number 3. The other thing I'd like to note is recognize our newest planning commissioner, Garrett Aldred. And Garrett has filled the seat vacated by Robert Miller, whose term was limited. And so I want to welcome Garrett to the commission.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Commissioners, time for the approval of minutes. Any changes? Everybody's had time to review them. Any changes or anything?
I make a motion to approve the minutes
Second?
Motion
of
second.
November 3rd,
Yeah, thank you.
November 3rd.
I have a motion second to approve the minutes for the November 3rd, 2022 meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
nay. Passes. Okay, next is our consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, and these will be acted on together unless a commissioner or someone from the public wants to pull them, we call it, and then we can hear the details about those particular ones. Those 2 they'll be removed from consent agenda, and then we'll hear the presentation on them if someone from the public or the commission so desires. Commissioners, anything that you want to pull?
No.
Anybody from the public, those first two, E1 and 2, if you're looking at your agendas. Seeing no ones, commissioners? I need a motion.
I make a motion, Mr. Commissioner, to accept the consent agenda as written.
Second.
I have a motion second to accept the consent agenda.
I just want to make sure that's to accept and approve the items on the.
Accept and approve, for number 159 and of number 0050.
Got a second?
Yes, second.
Got a second? Very good. Okay, not much discussion on that. Can we call the rolls?
Member Aldred.
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden.
Yes.
Member Hubbard.
Yes.
Member Garza.
Aye.
Member Peters.
Aye.
Member Estrada.
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict.
Yes. All right. Very good. Now on to new business. For pretty good amount of folks here. How we usually address these is we will have, the staff will make a presentation, and the commission will then ask questions of the staff. We'll then have the applicant come forward and speak to to those issues, any of those issues that and add anything that they would like to add. And then we will open the public portion. We will invite any of you all that have any input on it to come forward. And we'll limit your time to 3 minutes. Please be succinct and don't repeat what somebody else has said if at all possible. Crystal clear. We'll begin. Our first order of business is hold a public hearing, consider forwarding a recommendation to the City Council for a request from Zion for a zone change, B4 to B3. And this is DSA 22-00240.
Good evening, Commissioners. The first item on the agenda is a zone change request from B4, which is Community Services, to B3, which is the Central Business Zoning District. This site is located at the northwest corner of Main Street and Hermosia Street in the downtown area. The site is currently zoned B4, and again, the request is to B3. The site is requesting to be rezoned to allow for 0-foot setbacks, which is allowed in the B3 zoning district, and to better align with the city's general plan and downtown land use category. Regarding the zone change review criteria, there are 3 criterias listed in the staff report. One of them is the consistent with the general plan goals, policies, and elements. One of the goals is to develop a strategy for downtown development, redevelopment, and adaptive reuse. And one of those action steps is to encourage the conversion of vacant and or underutilized sites to a more intensive urban use, which this site would do. And the second one is the rezoning conforms to the general plan, and the site is within the downtown land use category, as you can see on the map, and B3 is an appropriate zoning for that land use category. And if the third one is the proposed zone change is necessary and proper at this time to meet the land use needs of the residents of the city. So the zone change to B3 within the downtown land use category will allow the existing site to be in conformance with the zoning code for the existing site. Regarding notification, public hearing notification efforts for this request met or exceeded the city code. I did not receive any questions or comments regarding this request. So with that, staff recommends Planning Commission forward a recommendation to City Council to approve the zone change request from B4 to B3 DSA 22-00240 with the following conditions of approval. Happy to answer any questions the Commission may have.
Commissioners? No questions? Very good. Would the applicant or their representative like to come forward and speak to this issue? Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, hello, my name is Renzo Correa. The business that I represent, Zion Brothers Construction, is located at 2728 East Earl Drive in Phoenix, Arizona, 85016. The property that we are looking to request zoning change is 512 East Main Street in downtown Casa Grande. So, yeah. Do you guys have any questions for me or anything you want me to explain?
All right.
No,
No? Really?
getting away.
Mark, you all right? Very good. Directors there? All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
What-
Now I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anybody in the public like to address this issue, please come up and state your name and address. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion and bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a recommendation to City Council to approve the zone change request from B4 Community Services to B3 Central Business, DSA-22-00240, with the following conditions of approval as presented by staff.
I'll second it.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to recommend the city council approve the zone change DSA 22000240. Any discussion?
That's what they're gonna make.
Seeing none? Okay. Seeing none, please call the roll, Michelle.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Yes. All right. Next,
Congratulations.
yep, thank you, appreciate it. Next, we'll have, hold a public hearing, consider a request by Upfront Planning for land use approval for 22.9 acres of land for Jefferson Avenue and Murray Boulevard. Joe?
All right. Upfront, planning is requesting approval of a conditional use permit and a major site plan to allow for a waste and used materials processing and transfer center on 22.9 acres of land generally located near the southeast corner on Jefferson Avenue and McMurray Boulevard. You can see the site highlighted below. The site will include 3 buildings. It's going to be around 70,000 square feet of space, a fueling station, storage area, and additional land for future expansion. A conditional use permit and associated resolution is required to allow for the use of scrap metal or used material processing, handling, and storage. The transfer station will be a municipal solid waste transfer station and take only non-hazardous waste. Examples of the non-hazardous waste can include household waste, appliances, commercial waste, industrial waste, construction and demolition waste, and then green waste or landscape waste. You can see the zoning here is an I-2 zone district surrounded by I-1, which is light industrial, and other I-2 properties. Overview of the site plan relatively quickly. Here's a look at the site plan, and we'll highlight a few of the main points of it. You know, we'll just go from north to south. We've got your access point up north, a weight scale for trucks coming in, container storage yard in the rear of the property, an admin and maintenance building, a fueling station, another admin building, the parking for staff, and then truck parking behind that. And then you've got your transfer buildings and truck and parking access in the far south of the site. Just a quick overview of the elevations of the buildings. The highest point of the building is about 32 feet, which meets all our zoning code requirements. And these are the 3 proposed structures that will be on the site. In looking at the conditional use permit, we cover the 5 criteria. We're just going to concentrate on the main one tonight, which is that the proposed use will have no adverse effect on abutting property. The site is located in an I-2 General Industrial Zone District. As stated in our city code, the purpose of the I-2 General Industrial Zone is to provide for the development of industries which, because of the nature of their operation, appearance, traffic generation, or emission, would not be compatible with land uses in other zoning districts, but which nevertheless are necessary and desirable activities in the city. So this zone district does provide an appropriate area for this intended use. However, the proposed use does have the potential to have some aesthetic impacts on surrounding properties if not properly addressed. The site does abut many light industrial zone uses, as I pointed out on the zoning slide, and to ensure we are limiting or not adversely impacting these surrounding uses, staff is requesting that the applicant provide a 6-foot-tall staggered decorative block wall along the Jefferson Street frontage and an 8-foot-tall decorative block wall around the remaining perimeter to help mitigate and minimize any adverse impacts on the abutting properties. Just kind of want to give you a couple examples of other waste facilities that we were able to locate. You can see them here. They've all got block walls. at different varying heights to help screen this use, as it is a waste transfer station, so you will be processing waste outdoors, indoors. And so the block wall is a very important part of our recommendation tonight. In looking at the major site plan review criteria, we look at all this, the criteria you see here. All's been covered in your staff report. I'm just going to point out a little bit on the traffic conditions. A traffic impact analysis was prepared for this development, and it did conclude that off-site improvements are required at Thornton and 9th Street. Additionally, the city's traffic engineer has requested some modifications and clarifications be made to the TIA, so they will have to address some of that. And if any new items come up that they'll need to do improvements with, we'll address at that time and have them amend their site plan appropriately. The three improvements that are indicated in the TIA is to install a right turn lane on Thornton Road and 9th Street, and then install a stop sign and also restripe some of Thornton Road. In regards to notification, we met or exceeded all requirements. We did receive a comment from the ownership abutting the site. So the adjoining property owner shared his concerns about the impact this use could have on the property, on his property. He fully supports the requirement for the applicant to provide the block wall. He inquired about who the owner is and where they have other operations. However, due to an existing NDA or non-disclosure, the applicant representing the ownership was unable to divulge that ownership, but did state that they had over 20 similar sites in Arizona. I had a couple of emails that we provided tonight for you, and I've also had a couple of phone conversations with that gentleman. In conclusion, staff recommends the commission approve the conditional use permit and associated resolution with the following condition, and it is to provide that 6-foot staggered decorative block wall along the frontage and the 8-foot wall around the remaining perimeter. And secondly, staff recommends the commission approve the major site plan with the following conditions, and it is to amend the TIA to address the comments from the traffic engineer, and then public improvement permit shall include the improvements to Thornton Road as I indicated in the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Joe, I had a question just on that email that that gentleman sent you. He talked about 180 trips, like, right off the bat. Is that, and we talked, you had 56 on there, so is he?
It's about 100.
Okay.
Shown here, I've got it, you can see table E1 is the trip generation. To begin, it's around 100 trips per day, and then in about 5 years, it does go up to about 200 trips per day.
Yeah.
I believe the 2029 takes into account an expansion of the facility, which we would then be getting another amendment to the site plan and another TIA associated with that.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
Joe, with a facility like this, do you think it'll have kind of maybe a positive impact on the city's solid waste facility down on Chewy Chew, or is it something going to be totally different? It just seems like it may give some relief to that.
It certainly does give it the potential for that. It is a private waste company.
Right.
So you could take your trash to this facility as well as the city facility. So it does have the ability to give relief.
Pay for it though, right?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? So you made the comment that you thought there was an expansion on 2029 was expected.
I believe the TIA in the 5 years out, the site does have room to grow and left some land vacant for future expansion.
Okay.
So, but I would probably want to defer to
Sure.
the applicant to answer that specifically.
Sure. All right, very good. Okay, any other questions for the staff? Very good. Okay, would the applicant, their representative, please come forward to address this issue? Please state your name and address.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Sarkisian, Upfront Planning, 1811 South Alma School Road in Mesa, Arizona. Thank you guys so much for hearing our case. The site, as Joe mentioned, is right here in this industrial area. I'm going to go over a couple of things. While we agree with a lot of their comments, we do have a concern about one of the stipulations. So that's why we are speaking to you today about this. So the site is here. I actually drove by and you'll see a bunch of photos, which were kind of, you'll see I didn't get to edit them. They're not very pretty. They're through my car window and everything, but just to give you an idea. The site is here. It is a very large site compared to some of the properties around it and the property to the south. Okay, let's see here.
Down arrow.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, exactly like you said, huh? So here's the site and vicinity to everything. You can see you have the APS property to the east, and then you can see Jefferson comes down and just south of the railroad. And it's in this industrial area, and you have Hewlett Bend Highway just to the south as well. Zooming in again, it's close to 23 acres. Jefferson is the road that is the only roadway frontage to the west. It does have that little sliver that connects to Thornton. That is an emergency kind of access point. There's no real width or right-of-way or access that's going to be connected to there. You can't see it here. I'm going to show you the ugly site plan in a little bit, but here is the entire general plan. It's manufacturing industry. The whole place is purple. As you know, Casa Grande's kind of going crazy with industrial right now. It's a lot of stuff. You do have the zoning map, which Joe had shown earlier. The property that had written that letter is the one directly to the south, which is also Industrial 2. And we have Industrial 2 again to the west. And we have the Industrial 1, the APS to the east, and then to the north again, and then some properties. Here is the site plan. As far as the expansion, I have personally not heard about that. That would require another site plan to come through. But as you can see on the site plan, we have some major utility line easements coming off that APS property just to the east. And so that does restrict the site quite a bit, which is why we have such a significant buffer up there, as well as retention. And we also have some lines that are going across the other side of the site. So all that area is, I don't know how, that's not really a very good area to expand. It would be some creative planning in there if they ever did want to expand. But this here you can see, as he mentioned, the access would be off at Jefferson. And then you have the administrative maintenance to the north and the transfer buildings to the south. Here it is shown just with, I wanted to show you the landscaping. Unfortunately, I don't have it in color, but we were asked to add, obviously, the 15-foot landscaping in front. In the front area, in front of the block wall fence along Jefferson, is all landscaped. We're also landscaping along the north side in that retention area, also along the north with underneath the easements as far as what we are allowed to with those easements to make sure we don't get in their way. But this is the proposed site. You can see the transfer buildings, which are going to be buff against the property to the south. And then here is, again, he showed the administrative maintenance shop and the transfer buildings. And then they're going to be developing a waste transfer facility within Casa Grande. This is non-hazardous. This is simply garbage trucks could be taking, or most likely will be taking it here to transfer to the larger trucks, which can handle about 20 of the garbage trucks into one and transfer them to a landfill or wherever a recycling facility station if they decide to elect it. So this is truly just a transfer station, would be the primary use. People can drop off their items here if they wish to, for like a fee, as you mentioned. However, this is primarily just for, they would say, municipal waste trucks coming through here to drop it off. The recycling, if they decided to do that, would get further segregated inside the buildings and transferred to recycling facility. This site is also subject to ADQ transfer permits, stormwater permits, and it's supposed to say PNAL, county air quality permits. So it does go through quite a bit of permits to make sure everything's operating correctly. And then this is a helpful thing, as mentioned in the other communities. It's a closer facility to help reduce desert dumping. If people do want to have some things they want to get rid of, you can dump it here. And they will take it for you. So just want to give you some insight as far as what the surrounding area, I'm not sure if I saw somebody out there earlier today also looking at the site, not sure if it's one of you guys, but this is, the top one is looking from Jefferson. This is during the day, so this is through Google. But you can see the other site. They have a chain link around their site, except for the front, along their property and their buildings as well. And they have some open panels, I'll see earlier. And then this is also looking northeast, so you can kind of see it's like all the transfer lines of the electricity, as well as you can see a little bit of the railroad there. This is looking north from 9th Avenue Street onto the property on the south side. So you see they also have wrought iron and chain link with razor wire on top. And then you also have along 9th Street onto existing sites. This is all existing. Again, it's chain link with razor wire, and then they have some shielding. This is the pictures I took today, so I apologize. They're blurry and a little dark. But this is the comment from the neighbor to the south, the 1092 Jefferson. This is their facility. They also have a large facility building, just like we're proposing. And they have chain link with razor wire on top. You can see this is actually from Jefferson. This is the street frontage. And then you can see on the bottom right-hand side, it's very difficult to see, but they do have a block wall in the front, which is what we are also proposing and going to have. But once it starts going to the back, it goes to chain link. Chain link with razor wire. We're not proposing razor wire, we're just proposing chain link at this time, And so that is that site. And then it is really dark. And then you can see the APS. This is from Thornton Road. You can see the APS substation. This is turning right onto 9th. You can see there's Price Road. They also have a wrought iron fence. And then you can see the chain link across the street. Again, on 9th, you have chain link with razor wire and shielding. Granted, it's not the prettiest shielding. It's not what we would propose. But then again, you have some block wall, but these block walls are facing Jefferson. This is what we are agreeing to, is facing Jefferson. And then they have landscaping in front. We are also, as you saw, proposing landscaping in front. On some of them on Jefferson, you have the solid block wall, but then you have some different kind of metal shielding, but it is not a block wall. It is a different type of option for shielding and screening. And again, you have on the bottom, you also can see that there's a little bit of block wall on the other side, but it's a lot of chain link. There's some tow yards over there and things like that. And so this is my point of this, is that they're stating that with our CUP, everything is okay, except that staff feels the primary concerns would be the aesthetics of the site, and they have requested, which we are agreeing to, a 6-foot staggered decorative block wall along Jefferson Street. However, they have added that they want an 8-foot decorative wall around the remaining perimeter of basically a 23-acre site, which is a massive site to do a block wall on. Aesthetics is not a health, safety, welfare issue and has no relation to what is being done on the site. It is aesthetic purposes. We want to make the site look as nice as possible as well, and we agree to screening, that was originally discussed as screening the adjacent properties. However, we had discussed other options instead of a block wall, as other properties have done. That we don't feel this is a reasonable request to input onto our property owner, because it does not help better the use of this property or better the adjacent properties. They would all have screening next to them. And if you go back, what our elevation for our side of our property along the south side is very similar to what the existing building type and elevation looks like on that property. So facing each other, they're very similar. And then the CUP directly benefits the residents and businesses of Casa Grande as a waste transfer facility as it's continuing to grow. And here are other existing facilities. I know they gave you some. This north one is an example of one in California, an actual picture. Again, the front, the landscaping, and the block wall, but the rear yard is actually only 5 feet privacy chain link, which you can do. And here's, it's not hard to see, but this is in Phoenix, the site plan that was recently approved. So they are doing chain link there because it's not against the roadway. If it was against the road, completely agree. It's definitely aesthetics. You want to have a block wall or some kind of better visual. But to be against and adjacent to existing industrial uses occupied, the 8-foot block wall is 6 foot is kind of excessive. 8-foot block wall is just not done. I've been asking around for costs of these things, and they're all thought I was like, why would you do an 8-foot block wall? That's insane, and I'll tell you the cost of that. But these are also some other transfer facilities. You can see here on the north one, it's not a block wall, but it is like a metal shield, metal kind of fencing. On the south side in Tucson, it is a chain link with some burlap or something you need to do. So here we want to say the applicant shall provide the staggered 6-foot decorative block wall along Jefferson Street frontage, which is about 800 feet. We are okay with that. We're agreeing to that. We put in different architectural renderings for that. However, the 8-foot block decorative wall around the remaining perimeter is just something that we feel is excessive and doesn't add to the project or is unnecessary. Actually, this is before I got the one thing, but 390, it's about 3,900 linear feet of an engineered block wall fencing, not including paint or any of that to make it more decorative. An 8-foot solid, which is different from an 8-foot without grout. An 8-foot solid at the most becomes actually $665,000 for an aesthetic purpose that is adjacent to existing chain link fences in an already industrial zoned property in manufacturing inside and not against adjacent properties that are roadways. The front side will be done as they're asking. And aesthetics, again, is not a health, safety, welfare issue and has no relation to what's being done on the site. It becomes, it does not meet the nexus criteria of how one relates to the other, how the health, safety, and welfare of that site relates to having an 8-foot block wall versus a 6-foot chain link or a 6-foot block wall or even just a 6-foot screen wall. It doesn't have to be block. That block really creates a hardship of an excessive amount of funds that's going to require to operate the site and be operational. And then we had no other issues with the other stipulations or anything. So that's basically, we feel it is adjacent to the surrounding properties. We are fine with the other stipulations and their comments. We feel it would be great for the area and help out with the transfer of facilities in the area. But we don't feel that the 8-foot requirement, which was added after we had meetings and discussions, is something that is necessary for this site. It can be done with simply screening of the site as was required, but to specifically put in an 8-foot block decorative wall is very cumbersome. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
On the pictures that you showed before with the other waste plants, did they have block walls? I don't remember that we just showed.
Yeah, the facilities that I showed all had block walls. I guess the question is, those were all from street view. So I don't know if they had different fencing in the other portions of the perimeter. The issue becomes that we're trying to protect the surrounding other owners from a waste transfer station. So when you have garden and light industrial and given some of the stuff to the north, we think will eventually change out and become other industrial type uses. We're just looking out for the best interest of all the surrounding properties and mitigating any adverse impact as much as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I get for Joe? Can I ask Joe a question?
I think let's focus on
Then we can come back.
Okay.
them, and then when we come back, we'll ask questions of staff, if that's all right. If you object, we'll do it.
It's fine. No waves.
Kind of did the same thing, sorry.
Anything else for the applicant? I had it, so your objection is to the block wall. Are there, the description I'm trying to think of, solid fencing that would be acceptable or better for you?
Yes, and we don't have, I mean, there's so many different kinds right now.
Yep, I'm sure.
So as what was originally in the emails we received from staff and discussed, it was just said rest of the property items shall be screened from public view. Storage material shall be screened from adjacent properties. We can easily do that. It's just a matter, I mean, it didn't have a definition as what type, because I know some people, the city may, I mean, some people do chain link with slats, chain link with fabric, like there's the metal one, there's so many different options. It just depends on what kind of agreement they come to, as long as the block wall is just, especially at 8 feet, it then requires it to be engineered. It's not just a simple 6 foot. It gets really cumbersome on such a large site. I mean, it is larger than all the other parcels that are around it right now.
And you have 20 other sites in Arizona?
At minimum, yes.
And what type of fencing do you have on these
So
other-
that was, if I can find it, that was one of the examples I had put up. So this one is, well, this one's in Phoenix. It's going to have the same one where it has the front block walls, 6 foot with 5 foot privacy chain link, and that was approved last year. And then these are other, actually, some of their sites in Tucson. There's that one, the top one with the metal, and then there's that one in Tucson. It just depended on where they were and what the cities and jurisdictions wanted or were found acceptable at that time. But there are a variety of different material. But they all, I mean, these ones don't, but we agree with like this, with the solid block wall in front. We have staggered with decorative and landscaping. That's agreeable, yeah.
To add to it, just quickly, we did on the LKQ site, which is a salvage yard, we did require block wall along all street frontages, and we did allow them to do aluminum, like panel fencing on the rear portions of their site. To be clear on that, though, those were all surrounded by other I-2 zone district uses, so, and property. So I think that's what led us to the block wall conclusion in the first place, is that we have some I-1 uses, and the other uses that are in the area are actually very well maintained. The group to the south does all their work inside as a polyurethane foam panel maker, and so they don't typically have much outdoor storage on that site, so they don't impact other properties. But I just want to make sure that we did provide LKQ relief on the block wall on their north and their west fencing to be an aluminum panel type fencing.
And just to clarify too, the transfer of items is inside the building. They pull in, and the trucks are there, and they swap stuff out, and that's how it works. You're not outside like digging and pulling piles of stuff. You know, it's specifically for transferring.
Question, you said some of the other sites, they have the chain link. How high is the chain link?
6 feet.
So we're asking for an 8 block versus a 6 chain. Okay.
And so you can see on the I-2, so both properties directly to the east are APS substation. And then you have a couple properties along the north side. There's a couple vacant. I think there's some truck hauling on one of them with piping or something. And then another one is a tow truck salvage area, even kind of thing. So and those ones, I know the one with the water has some fencing, better fencing around it, but the other ones do have chain link. And I mean, not to say, but it's not the best to look at either from our portion. But but we would have fencing and be able to screen it. We just don't want to screen it with a block wall.
Vice Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Jessica, where are the trucks coming from and where are they going?
They would be coming, I believe, from, they could be municipal trucks or their own, from doing rounds of picking up garbage somewhere, just local or business or whatever, and they would be going to landfills.
Oh, okay, so it's just sourcing another form of waste management within the city, just privately held?
Just to get it, the smaller trucks, off the smaller trucks into the bigger truck for actual transfer.
Okay. And then, so they're going to primarily be using Thornton for their access in and out? They're not going to be going down, I don't remember what it's called.
Well, they would have to, if they would have to go south on Thornton and do that right in, right out, or right turn lane, and then they would come in, they can't directly access the site from Thornton. They would have to go directly off of Jefferson. There's 2 access points. Well, there's one access point for trucks, and then there's a separate one for employees and people who want to drop anything off as well.
Right. And then just one last question
Yes.
for you or Joe. The 2 properties to the east of this site, what are those uses that are directly off Thornton?
That's a APS substation.
Can show you that
Both
picture.
of those parcels?
Yeah, I think
where
it's
is
both
it?
parcels.
Let me see, is this one of them? Yeah, so it's the top left picture. That's kind of, they also have a cell tower on it, but yeah. And that's what feeds all those utility easements that go through the north part of our site that we can't really touch anything in there.
And just a clarification from Joe, we did approve residential development not too far away from this, right? Caddy corner to kind of all of this area off of Thornton.
Cotton, yeah,
Yeah.
The,
Cottonwood and Thornton.
Where the hatched area is?
that residentially zoned, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the hatched area
Yeah.
is residentially zoned.
So you-
Or,
Okay,
excuse me,
thank
not residentially zoned, it's a general plan. It's, the general plan is now in neighborhoods category, and they are considering rezoning. So currently, it's still zoned for industrial, but it is general plan as neighborhoods,
Right.
Neighborhoods, got it. Thank you.
with cause.
Thanks, Sloss.
Yeah. Goes further down.
Can you go back, what is the fencing around the substation?
It's chain link.
Is it?
The-
Yeah, it's not very pretty either.
Just one concern, one other thing to point out, the concern with chain link and the fabric screening is the fabric typically breaks down relatively quickly, especially in this environment. So that's one of our bigger concerns with the fabric screening or even slat screening on chain link fence.
Yeah, you can't see it as well in the dark ones, and then you can't see it, but you can kind of see at the far end, but it's
Yeah.
probably 6 or 8 foot with razor wire on top.
Yeah, it is. It's chain link all over.
So that's really just what we're asking for, is just to modify, for approval, that requesting approval with that stipulation modified to remove that and that one stipulation.
Mr. Chair, could I
Yes.
ask the applicant a quick question?
Yeah.
Jessica, is there going to be any outside storage of materials? I know you said it's sorted inside the buildings,
Sorted,
but
right,
is there
and-
storage outside?
So the outside storage area that we had talked about during our meetings were, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of see it's that top right corner area. That's kind of like a little bulb out. So any storage would be there, and as also part of our thing, we would have to screen that. That was part of our, it said all screening of outdoor storage areas shall be screened.
And can you describe for us what kind of materials they might be?
I don't know at this time. It's not,
Just, what do you think?
I would guess if anything, it might be, bins or something, but they would be, it's not outdoor storage of debris, but it would be.
Tires, appliances?
No, it's not that kind of transfer facility.
Okay.
No.
Weren't these areas as well going to have some outdoor storage as they sort, or?
It's how
I
the
may be
trucks
wrong.
come in. So the trucks would back in there.
Yeah.
So you would have you have the large trucks coming in one side and the smaller truck coming in the other side, and so they kind of meet and they distribute and then they go out.
Yeah, and am I correct that the plan shows the building is open on that?
The north
on
side,
that
yeah.
side?
Yeah, and so I didn't get that number, but just for reference, the administrative maintenance building is 270 feet away from that property line. So it's obviously going to be much further to that one on the south, but there's also landscaping in those areas to the north, and we would be fine with screening, just not block wall. And then to the south, you're looking at around 50 to 81 feet setbacks. So we're exceeding all of our setback requirements as well, and meeting all our landscape requirements and exceeding them. So we really do want to be a good neighbor, and it is a reputable company that has investment in Arizona, and it's just a matter of that is a requirement that they have not seen anywhere, and I've been asking around, and it's 8-foot engineered block is a very extremely costly item that is typically not required adjacent to existing industrial uses that are already occupied. So,
So, help educate me on the, well, I'll call it the south to the bottom. Are those more power lines?
there is an easement that goes along there, but that's also going to be on the south side, that's a drive to get to the, so if you see, like, let's see, where is it? Which one is it? So if you see south side, which one is it? The transfer building, south elevation, so that's the trucks that can go along the south side there, and they go around that building, and then they come back. Or here, it's easier to see here. You can see there's drive points through there. There it is.
I can't see that.
We're behind the screen.
Oh,
We're behind the screen, we can't see it.
you can't see the PowerPoint?
I can't.
We can see the
No,
PowerPoint,
we see the
Oh.
PowerPoint, but I can't see, you're pointing.
Oh,
it
I'm
looks
not
like
pointing.
you're
Oh, there's no pointer on this,
Um,
sorry. It's probably just my talking with my
You're
hands.
pointing, there we go, now we're talking.
So there, yeah, so there's the drive, so they can go in there and do their thing and then come back around.
There.
Okay, so they're driving by, okay. Interesting. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Not here.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any members, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public like to address this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting.
Hold on. We've got a question for staff.
Yes. Many questions for the, all right, go.
Joe, question on that, on the wall. What does a 6-foot block wall do versus the 8-foot? Different, I mean, cost, what, we're 430,000, chain link is so much, and would that fit our needs?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually, I actually spoke with our building official in regards to the additional cost, and look, a real rough, quick conversation estimate is probably about a 35% increase in cost, and it does go to an engineering level, so you have to engineer the footings to make sure they can handle the wind load.
Right.
So there is a pretty decent increase in cost from 6 foot to the 8 foot.
But that's something we would possibly consider based upon the conversations tonight or anything?
Yeah, it's absolutely up to you guys to consider
Okay.
what you guys think is appropriate for the conditions. What you're seeing is a recommendation from staff,
Gotcha.
so.
Thank you. Thank you.
And maybe if I could address it as well as, our biggest concern is to the property to the south, frankly, right now. Because even though it's zoned I-2, it's really an I-1 kind of use, no outside storage, well-maintained property. You just saw how close these larger, the trash trucks are going to be between that building and that south property line going through there. And so we're just really trying the best we can to create compatibility between that property to the south. The APS power station to the east, frankly, I'm not that concerned about it. Commissioner Garza did bring up the future residential just to the east of that, which, I hadn't thought about that, but that is something that potentially is a concern. To the north, you have all those easements, and so we could pull that fence in, closer to the usable part of the site. So, because clearly those easements are just kind of open space area, we're not really concerned about that. Those properties to the north are kind of underutilized today, and they're probably interim uses. They're probably going to redevelop because the property is too valuable for the kinds of uses that are on those properties to the north with what's happening in our industrial sector today. So there probably are going to be future I-1 uses to the north redevelopment. So today, our biggest concern is really the property to the south. Frankly, it doesn't really have to be an 8-foot block wall. It could be an 8-foot metal wall that's decorative, that looks good, right? Maybe matches the metal on the building or something. But we think it needs to be more than a 6-foot screen and clearly should not be just fabric on a chain link fence.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate that comment.
No, he kind of answered where I was going with it, so I'm good.
Well, here we go. So, yeah, I think I had a long drawn-out question, and I think you guys have very well answered. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they covered
Quite a bit.
Covered quite a bit of the things that are certainly going through our minds, and trying to listen to the applicant, and trying to come up with a world, that we all can live in and live well in. So,
It really reminded me of when we were doing the LKQ, because there was a big question with the block wall all the way around. And I think we wound up compromising and using, what was it exactly that they used? For the sides?
Okay.
Are you asking what the
LKQ?
materials are?
Yeah, the materials.
It was like an aluminum panel wall, so they're large paintable panels made of
Yeah.
aluminum, and then they're supported on each
Because I remember it
end.
was a compromise
So-
on a lot
And
of
they
it.
could just match the building. Is aluminum that much difference in pricing than the block wall? I would assume it would be.
Yeah, I think it would be a considerable difference. I don't know the difference, but it was certainly something that LKQ, it
Would that
was
be
pretty.
something we could compromise on, or,
that's why I asked the
Yeah.
question. The
I mean, would
applicant,
you,
know,
would they be?
Yeah, we would certainly, look,
Yeah.
again, this is, our recommendation was initially an 8-foot block wall, and I think Paul articulated
Yeah.
pretty clearly that we would consider even potentially protecting mostly the south property owner, and then, but again, it's gonna be a decision for you guys to install that condition.
So you really want the
That's-
block
that's-
wall
That's what we
south of this
compromised with
property?
last time.
Aesthetically, that certainly would look the best because it would match the frontage. Could staff support an 8-foot metal fence that matched the building? Yeah, along there as well. I don't know what the cost differential are. They both have to be engineered. They both would need footers. It's really the cost of the material, and I can't speak to what the differential is, but
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
we think some kind of 8-foot solid wall along the south property line is really important.
And to add to it, into Celeste's inquiry, the property shown here is Price Industries, and there are some talks of an expansion going north into this parcel that they also own. This is Price Industries building here on the screen, and there is a potential expansion there. And again, they're relatively clean. That's actually Price Industries. Cardinal's Glass is located across the street.
Yeah.
So, that's it.
And where's the residential? It's over here, right?
It's
that
to the
This right over
right.
here?
yeah.
Yeah, this area is
Yeah.
the
Right
one
there, yeah.
that's been general
Yeah,
plan to neighborhoods.
That's the one.
Yeah, it's just general plan yet. We've still,
But there's been talk.
specifically, where the residential is gonna go on that land is, we don't know at this point, so.
But we want it to look nice. I mean, we don't want to be like everybody else. I mean, so.
Yeah, so,
Correct.
correct me, the price that you were just talking about, they have that metal tubing, for lack of a better term, does that surround the whole facility?
No.
If my memory's right?
Not the back.
Price, and I'm not, all of Price's manufacturing happens indoors. So they
Right.
don't have the outdoor storage, which which
Right.
means that it doesn't mean that it has to be screened per our city
Right.
code. I mean, you might be referring to bull moose tube, as
Could be.
well. So
I'm just-
there's a lot of uses along Jefferson that do have some outdoor storage and things like that. And I think the biggest concern that we have as staff, again, is just those two, the property to the south,
Right.
which we had contact from, its owner. They recently built that north building to expand their operations and make sure that they kept everything indoors. They were doing so much materials that they were doing some outdoor storage, and they wanted to make sure they cleaned that up, so they added that building to the north that you see
Okay.
right here. So, and they have concerns about I mean, bottom line is it's a waste transfer station, and so that's the concern.
100%.
That's it.
So,
Yeah. Understand their concern.
so, but an alternative solution that you guys deem fit would certainly be something
I think,
staff could
Yeah.
you get it?
consider.
I think just replacing block with solid would be, in your phrasing, would be helpful.
Okay, be a little bit more specific. Yeah.
I don't know. Go ahead.
I don't know,
Give it to us, brother.
I'm
Give
not
us a-
sure, I mean,
give
you
us
say
the
solid,
motion,
I
my
mean,
friend.
what do they put up, plastic? That's solid. It would have to be something more specific, you know? I'm not saying,
Go,
I'm just
brother.
saying.
Give me the language. Give me the language. I'm ready.
Just one question for Joe, that, when
Yes, sir.
Price put that additional building in to the north of them,
That's not Price.
did they put a fence or a wall or something around that?
So that's not Price Industries. Price Industries was the other group.
Oh, okay.
They were, at one point, they did have some outdoor storage of their panels, which are big styrofoam, polyurethane foam panels that they use in construction. And at that point, they did do the screening that, I think Jessica had a good picture of it. It was a chain link with fabric screening.
Okay.
But then since they've built that new building, they don't have that outdoor storage need anymore. So they're not storing any out there. And so in reality, they don't even need the fabric screen at this point. I think they take pride in their operations and they take pride in their site.
They have that today, the screen fencing.
Mhm.
I guess one concern I have is just transferring household trash can be dirty business. One wind blow and things could get everywhere. So leaving it a chain link, I just don't think is a good idea, just in case it does get out of that contained building where they're moving the trash around. But, you know,
Yeah.
it could get dirty and smelly.
There you go.
I agree.
We do have city code that addresses if odor becomes an issue, so that there is, and that's one of the reasons our recommendations didn't expand to other things like odor, because we already have code written in the city code that addresses that.
Yes.
I just spoke to they said that they would be amenable to the aluminum fencing panels that you guys were discussing. That would be fine with them as well.
Thank you for that information.
It's just a tough
I
one.
think we have our word to put in there, aluminum.
It just reminded me a lot of LKQ, you know.
Still.
Would,
Any other, yeah, go. Gary.
would we retain that 6-foot staggered decorative block wall along Jefferson? Should we go to aluminum along the south part of the property?
No.
Okay.
In my opinion, I would say no. Because that's going to be the visual part of it.
Yeah, especially on that one.
Staff does think that that's a critical aspect, is
Yep.
to keep that decorative block wall. It matches other properties in the area, and we really are working to raise the bar in our industrial areas. So we do think the frontage should stay block.
All right? Sure. All right. Anything else? Any other comments? Yes, I'm looking at you.
No other comments. I'd like to make a recommendation. I'd like to make a motion.
Motion, I
Make
like
a
it.
motion. Recommend that the commission approve the conditional use permit and associated resolutions with the following conditions. Set by staff with a change of 8-foot block decorative block wall to 8-foot decorative block wall, 8-foot decorative metal or metal-like material around the remaining perimeter.
That clear, Commissioner? You got that? Because I'm not going to be able to repeat that. Okay, is that clear, Commissioners? What he's, okay. Do I have a second?
I second it.
I have a motion and a second.
You guys want me to read it, just to make sure it's clear?
I would love to.
Yes, please.
And make sure I've got it written down, just so we have
Yeah.
it for, because we're going to have to change the resolution, so.
Sure.
Applicant shall provide a 6-foot staggered decorative block wall along the Jefferson Street frontage and an 8-foot decorative metal or metal-like material wall around the remaining perimeter.
Yes.
And can we make sure it matches the building?
Yeah,
Would be,
Would it be?
that matches the building.
did I write decorative, or did I say decorative?
You said decorative.
Yeah.
He said
It
decorative.
says 8-foot decorative metal
Okay.
or
Yeah.
metal-like
Make sure it's
material.
That's, yeah,
I mean,
Is that what you guys,
yes.
is that the motion? Okay.
That's the motion.
Okay.
And you were the second? No. Did we get a second?
Yes, Vanderhayden.
yeah. but-
Very good.
yeah.
Okay, motion and second. Clear as a bell?
Muddy water.
Clear as a bell? No, we're all very clear on that.
Clear.
All right, Ms.
Member Aldred.
Thank you.
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden.
Yes.
Member Hubbard.
Yes.
Member Garza.
Aye.
Member Peters.
Aye.
Member Estrada.
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict.
Aye. Very good. DSA 220171 is passed. Now, we are back to the major site plan DSA 200170. I shouldn't say back to, we're at this one. Commissioners, we're with you, I believe.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go, brother.
Recommend the commission approve the major site plan DSA -20-00170 with the following conditions set by staff.
All right.
I'll second.
Yeah, I got a motion and a second to approve DSASA 20-00170 with the conditions as stated in the report.
Member Aldred.
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden.
Yes.
Member Hubbard.
Yes.
Member Garza.
Aye.
Member Peters.
Aye.
Member Estrada.
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict.
Aye. Very good. Passes, thank you. Thank you for working with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you continue work. Good luck on the next processes. All right.
Good job, team.
It really did take me back to LKQ. We had the same arguments, remember?
Yes, yeah.
They just do you, huh?
We've heard them. All right, very good. Next,
$500,000.
next on the agenda is, they're all, staff's all leaving? What's up for them? You're on your own, buddy. All right, next on our agenda is request from Arizona Water Company for this property in northwest corner of Lakeland Drive and Overfield Road. Currently zoned UR. We have several pieces of this, DSA 22-00125, 0012330, 00234, and then we're gonna go to 00236, and then we're gonna go to 00235.
All out of
And as we make our motions, we will all be perfectly clear on exactly what we're making motions on.
Yes.
There you go, Jim.
We good, Jim?
Sure thing. Well, good evening, Planning Commission. I'm the planner presenting the rest of the items this evening, and I just want to make an observation that all 4 of my items are for sites on the east side of I-10, which is kind of interesting because normally they're kind of scattered about. So, but this is, first one is to talk about a proposed water campus by Arizona Water Company. And as you introduced, there's 5 specific applications to facilitate the approval of this water campus, and I'm going to be talking about each one of these, but they do have to go through a minor general plan amendment, consideration of a zone change, conditional use permit, variance to landscape requirements by their request, and a major site plan. So a little bit of background. The proposed water campus is to be located at the northwest corner of Lakeland and Overfield. Just to give you an idea of where that's at, it sits between Quartzon and Cottonwood. It's about halfway. And they are proposing to develop this 5-acre site for a water campus, and I'll walk through what that looks like for you. So on this screen, the site plan's been has been rotated, so the right is to the north, and the top of the image is looking to the west. They're proposing 2 million-gallon water tanks, water storage tanks that will stand at 35 feet in height. And then there are 2 wells catty-corner to each other that's proposed, highlighted in gray there. Then there would be 2 20-foot tall backwash tanks. And then among the other things on the site, there would be an electrical control building, a chemical storage and containment area in the center of the site, pressure vessels, a booster pump station, and then smaller tanks and equipment that would all contribute towards the overall water treatment process. They're proposing 2 substantially sized retention basins towards the east and northern portions of their property. And this red line outline signifies the proposed setbacks that would be in place should this property be zoned to R2. And that's actually what's driving the zone change request, is to take the opportunity to utilize these reduced setbacks. It basically would be 20 feet from the west, south, and east boundaries and 10 feet from the north boundary. They would not have this flexibility of setbacks if they were to remain in the current zoning, which is urban ranch. They're also proposing an 8-foot block wall, coincidentally, surrounding the property.
I saw that too.
Decorative?
Sure, it's a CMU block wall. They have indicated that they will supply a color that is compatible with other walls, and there's a typical image of that. And then in addition to this, should all this be approved, when they go to construct, they would be obligated to do half-street right-of-way dedication. This is on a corner, so they would be required to do right-of-way dedication for Overfield Road, which is designated as a principal arterial, so they'd be dedicating 70 feet for right-of-way. And Lakeland is classified as a major collector, so they'd be dedicating 40 feet of their property for right-of-way. And they would be making half-street improvements respective to both of those streets to an extent to accommodate two-way traffic on Lakeland, and then on Overfield, the improvements would include a turn lane, and then both frontages would have public sidewalk as well. So again, in order to accommodate this proposed water facility, there's 5 specific applications that I need to go over this evening. The first one, and this isn't necessarily in the order that I'm going to discuss the associated criteria, but it makes the most sense to at least start off in this order. So the zone change would be taking the property from urban ranch to R2. And again, it is in order to allow the water campus to develop with less restrictive setbacks. A water campus would be allowed with the approval of a conditional use permit in its current zoning, urban ranch, but it would be subject to 50-foot setbacks. Whereas in the R2 zone, a water facility is also subject to approval of a conditional use permit, but it would get to enjoy less restrictive setbacks, which would help facilitate all of the equipment proposed on the site. But in order for a zone change to be considered, there must also be a minor general plan amendment to the fact that this site lies within the Phase 2 growth area. When a zone change is being contemplated to a more intense zone district, the requirement kicks in to change the phase area if it's in Phase 2. As you see on the map here, the Phase 1 growth area is property that lies south of Cottonwood. Everything north of Cottonwood is in Phase 2. The distinction between these growth areas is that Phase 1 identifies properties that are more easily able to be served by city services and infrastructure. It's closer to existing infrastructure, so it's more likely to be and more practically able to be developed, whereas sites in Phase 2 are those areas that are obviously further away from city services and infrastructure, and in order to zone it to a more intense use, the applicant would have to process a general plan amendment to demonstrate that it would be eligible, or they can justify why it should actually be considered a Phase 1 area. And so the proposal would put this into Phase 1, and then the conditional use permit, major site plan, and the variance request would all be to help accommodate the proposed layout of the facility itself. And again, as you can see, even though it's 5 acres in size, they have a lot of different equipment proposed, and they've demonstrated that they need all of this room to be able to accommodate everything, and they wouldn't be able to accomplish that if they were to develop as an urban ranch site. So the first application I'm going to dive into is the minor general plan, because as I mentioned, that has to be processed first before a zone change can be contemplated. All of the criteria surrounding a general plan amendment to change property from Phase 2 to Phase 1 is centered around whether or not the site can be served by city services and infrastructure. And the uniqueness of this site is such that it has very minimal reliance upon city services. The water campus would have relatively few trips per day, and it generates utility. It's a water campus, so it's not really reliant upon other utilities other than electric, which is in the area, and therefore we found that the criteria has been met. The staff report goes into these 5 in more detail. The zone change is subject to meeting 3 criteria that's centered around compliance with the general plan designation. This area is within the neighborhoods classification. Within the neighborhoods category, actually urban ranch is not considered an appropriate zone district. Property is allowed to remain urban ranch, but if someone were to take property that's currently not zoned urban ranch and proposed it to be zoned urban ranch, it wouldn't be allowed under the neighborhoods classification. So technically R2 is more compatible with that neighborhoods category. But the first criteria that we look at is, would the zone change be consistent with the general plan, which it is since it's within the neighborhoods category, and does it speak to goals, policies, and applicable elements? So one of the goals is to minimize land use conflicts. The most significant concern with this water campus request is how to minimize land use conflicts. And so one of the action steps is to require physical separation, such as fences, landscaping, between residential and non-residential developments. This is why their proposed 8-foot block wall is critical, because that will help with that. But this also speaks to landscaping. And in a later slide, the applicant is requesting a variance to the landscape standards. And staff is actually recommending denial of that variance, but for the reason of landscaping is important to speak to the general plan criteria with regard to this action step. And then one of the applicable elements found under guiding principle number 8 is to link all land use decisions to known available water resources to ensure long-term viability for all new growth and development. And since this would be developed as a water campus, it would exactly do that. It would enable surrounding properties to benefit from this facility. I did hear from the applicant that primarily this campus would pump water to Florence Boulevard, and it is in part funded by residential subdivision on the west side of I-10, as well as an industrial development west of I-10. But it may not directly impact them, but it would enable more water into the system as it would flow to Florence Boulevard. And then the second criteria for zoning that we look at is that it conforms if it complies with densities and intensities of the general plan. So neighborhoods does allow for greater density than what the urban ranch zone would normally be able to accommodate. Urban ranch allows a single family home on a lot that has to be a minimum of 1.25 acres. So there is a little bit of a nuance here that despite the fact this is in the neighborhoods category, the area around it is in that phase 2, and it is all currently very rural. And it probably would not be appropriate for this site to be a dense development. And so therefore there is a condition of the zoning that multifamily development, including multiple residential structures on a lot, would be prohibited. That would be just in the event that Arizona Water Company ultimately doesn't develop a water facility on here and it gets sold. It wouldn't be able to develop like other R2 zoned properties would be. And then the third criteria is that a proposed zone change is necessary and proper at this time to meet the land use needs of residents of the city. As I mentioned, the water campus here will benefit properties within the city. The reason why it's specifically located at Overfield and Lakeland is that the hydrology works the best. You know, when Arizona Water Company scouts out sites to do wells, they do a lot of analysis to determine if it's in an area where they can reach the aquifer in the most easy manner, and this location checks off some boxes for them. Now with regard to conditional use permit criteria, there's 4 criteria associated with conditional uses, and it really does kind of come back to compatibility. And I want to speak to that a little bit more. So again, the site's going to have fairly intense development within it, the 2 million gallon water tanks, etc. And it's all the more reason to champion the fact that they are proposing the 8-foot solid block wall, but also to emphasize the need for landscaping, particularly along the Lakeland and Overfield frontages, will help dress the site up. They have provided elevation view of the property, and as you can see, even with the 8-foot wall, the water campus is fairly visible because of the size of the structures. But in general, it's compatible with the commercial agricultural type development that you see around the site between silos and tall hay barns, etc. So the concern isn't so much the height of the equipment on the site and the tanks, but the lack of proposed landscaping. Here's another example of an agricultural site nearby the area, tall buildings. Again, you have a lot of equipment and farm implements right next to the road on nearby sites. So with respect to that, there's some compatibility. And then that comes down to the landscape variance. So there is a section of code that does require landscaping along street frontages. It would be 1 tree and 3 shrubs for every 30 feet. And it's to this section that the applicant is requesting an exception to. They are proposing xeriscape style landscaping along Lakeland and Overfield. And they're citing that the reason for that is within the American Society of Civil Engineers publication known as Guidelines for Physical Security of Water Facilities and Guidelines for the Physical Security of Wastewater, Stormwater Utilities, there's some standards that should be followed. Landscaping should not block or obscure buildings, walls, or assets, which would otherwise prevent detection of vandals, criminals, etc. Staff feels that, there can still be an assortment of landscaping with narrow canopies that would help achieve that concern or negate that concern. And also with modern technology, with sensors and cameras and such, that would be further negated. One of the guidelines also is that there should be a minimum clear zone around the perimeter, and that within this clear zone, there should be pruned, trimmed vegetation at a height of less than 4 inches. And so that's why they're proposing stone treatment around the perimeter. However, staff feels that there is an opportunity here to provide landscaping. Specifically, since it is a water facility, I don't think irrigation of the landscaping will be a challenge. But also, we would be fine with desert-friendly landscaping. And the Arizona Water Company site does promote desert-friendly landscaping for its customers. And this could serve as a great template for what properties can do with their property with drought-tolerant, desert-friendly landscaping, while still meeting the city landscape code. And this is the area that we have concern about. Again, it's just that 15-foot frontage along Lakeland and Overfield. And they are providing the space for that landscaping. It's just a matter of the city wanting to see trees and shrubs in that area versus stone. So when considering landscape variances, section 1752-300 does enable Planning Commission to grant a variance. However, there has to be a demonstration that extraordinary conditions exist. And if that has been found, Planning Commission is allowed to modify or vary from the provisions of the landscape code to an extent deemed appropriate to the public interest. And it's provided that that purpose and intent of this section is maintained. Staff feels that because there are alternatives that wouldn't compromise safety concerns, this criteria would not be addressed. And there's areas nearby that do provide landscaping. This is probably about a half a mile to a mile north of the site, where there is and this isn't done through an approved landscape plan, but there are sites nearby that doesn't look completely agricultural or desert in nature. And so as sites develop up and down Overfield and Lakeland, the idea is to have a landscape palette that will ultimately blend in with one another along frontages of property. With regard to the review of the major site plan, the only criteria that I want to talk about real quick is conditions on the property. So on the site itself lie 3 saguaro cacti. Staff is making a recommendation as a condition of approval of the major site plan is either that the site plan be revised to keep those 3 saguaro on the site surrounded by backwash tanks, et cetera, or alternatively relocate those to the landscape frontage, and those could be used as trees, helping contribute towards meeting their tree count that's required. Regarding the notification process, we followed all that which is required by city code, and there have not been any comments received as part of our public notification efforts. Staff is making the numbering's off here, so that's going to make it all the more fun. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 should be 4, 6 should be 5. But we are recommending that Planning Commission forward to Council a recommendation to approve the minor general plan amendment. We're making a recommendation that Commission forward to Council a recommendation to approve the general or the zone change, subject to the condition that multifamily development, including multiple principal residential structures on a single lot, is prohibited. We are recommending that Planning Commission move to approve the conditional use permit and its associated resolution, subject to City Council approval of the minor general plan amendment and zone change. We are asking that Planning Commission move to deny the landscape variance, finding that the variance is not within the public interest. And then we are asking that Planning Commission move to approve the major site plan, subject to the following conditions. There is one new condition that didn't make it into your staff report, and it's just basically if the landscape variance is denied, then by extension, the major site plan would have to be modified to provide code-required landscaping along the landscape, Lakeland and overfilled frontages. But otherwise, the other conditions deal with the relocation of the saguaro, and it's also subject to City Council's approval of the minor general plan amendment and the zone change. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jim, I'm just surprised that they didn't do the xeriscape outside. That was their idea. I can't believe they didn't do that, because that's, what a great example. I can't believe they're not doing that, so. They're the water company.
Commissioners, questions for staff?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
The saguaros mentioned, aren't they federally protected? So they would have to do something with them, or do they plan on as?
Chairman Benedict, Commissioner Peters, I briefly looked into that issue, and I actually found that there is some protection with regard to certain properties, but when it's privately owned and Arizona Water Company is a privately owned company, the protection's a little bit less severe.
That makes sense, okay. But they would have to do something with them anyways, other than maybe split them up between a crew and take them home, I don't know.
Yeah, well, just, in just a minute. Give us just a minute, I'll call you up. Hang in there, buddy, hang in there. Hang in there.
Okay,
Yep, you're-
done.
Anything else? Any other questions for staff? Questions for staff?
Molino.
Okay. So now, would the applicant or their representative please come forward?
State your name, please.
Did you need the
Address.
clicker?
No, I'm fine. Actually, I just wanted to address one piece of it. My name is Mark Karen.
Yes, thank you.
I'm
And
the
your
general
address?
manager with Arizona Water Company here in Pinal Valley.
Address?
10308, well, Arizona Water, I'll just give you
That's
mine.
fine.
10308 West Shetland Lane in Casa Grande, Arizona, 85194.
Very good, thank you.
So, actually, we have representatives, the design engineer for us, GHD, Frederick Tack, and he can address some of the other elements. I actually just wanted to talk about the saguaro cactus, Jim. And you're unaware of it. I don't think, Paul, you are either, but I worked with Kevin in Public Works, actually, and we had intended to relocate the saguaros. I had already worked this out, the Blue Star permit for the transportation. We were going to pay for it, and we still will when we get ready to do the excavation and the site improvements, to move those 3 cactus to your city facility over by the airport. So just so you all know, they're going to have a really good home. So I just wanted everybody to know that's a valid question, but it does take special permitting. We had intended to do it when we did the initial site work there, when we had to demolish the house and do some of the preliminary work, but it just didn't work out with the construction phasing and the contractor, but we will include that in this phase of the work. So anyway, that portion of it, I just wanted to put your minds at ease that we've been sensitive to that issue, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. My name is Frederick Tack. I'm with GHD, representing, doing the design for Arizona Water Company. So Chairman Benedict, commissioners in person and on the line, and staff. First of all, Jim did a great job putting this together, so I don't really have to spell this all out. So great presentation. Putting this together, as you can see, there's a number of applications. That really came through collaboration with the city, not negotiation. So we support all the direction and where we're at, being able to get here to produce this water facility. The only thing I wanted to mention is regarding the landscape variance request. First, the stipulation that the saguaros on site be potentially used for the landscape buffer. As Mark indicated, there are potentially other indications, so we would request that at least that direction got struck of where we put them. And then the other specific thing, Jimmy, you did a great job about providing the references of how we came to our decision on some industry standards for the safety and welfare of the landscape variance. As noted, one is to reduce the potential for vandals and assailants for those workers. But really the other is also for the safety of workers, and that's relating to just the attraction that vegetation has for vermin, other nuisance. And again, this being a potable water facility, the industry guidelines is to separate that, and it's by that buffer, generally of about that 6 to 8 feet. And although we have the space there, that's right where the sidewalk will be. So that landscaping that would be proposed would either need to be between the sidewalk and the curb in order to maintain that clear space. So our purpose for that, not that we're not in favor of the zero-scape landscaping that Arizona Water promotes, but we want to save that water for our customers and for the safety of their staff, who are also the public. Myself as a licensed engineer and board-certified water resource engineer, that's also my purpose, is to protect the public in general. We're not against the idea of tying the landscape together and really the site and the community together, but with the available footprint. One, if the landscape variance request to transition to completely stone treatment or xeriscape could not be supported, I would request that it not state meeting the required tree or tall requirement, as having vertical vegetation also promotes more birds and the ability to climb, which would have to be near or close to that wall of the site. So treatment that was under 3 feet would be more amenable to our intent for the safety of the site. And that's it. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Have you done any, like that xeriscape at some of your other plants at all, or?
The stone treatment, you mean, or with the planting?
Well, with any kind of xeriscape planting out front, anything that, that you're promoting? Have you done any of that there?
That represents that?
Yeah.
Yes, so it is possible.
Okay.
And we do have examples of that.
Good.
The idea, though, is that you're selecting plants that don't flower, that have things that are attracting insects, things like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't give my address. It's 8401 East Edgemont Avenue, Scottsdale, Arizona.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. actually.
Yes, go.
Did Arizona Water Company retain a registered landscape architect or anybody else that could speak to the transplantability of those saguaros?
No, not that I'm aware of. Mark?
We followed all the guidelines that require the Blue Star permit for transfer of that. And actually, the contractor that we would employ to do the work would be responsible for that's the requirement that we have to meet.
Okay.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, could I ask the applicant a
yes,
question?
please.
So, do I understand you to say if we allowed you to transfer the landscape requirement into our right-of-way, which would get you that separation you mentioned between the landscaping and your block wall, that would be acceptable to you?
I'm saying that the available boundary there for the landscaping, which is between the wall and the curb, that right-of-way being, that wall being 20 feet away from the right-of-way, we would like to just maintain the clear space around that. I wouldn't say that it would need to be transferred into the right-of-way, because I'm not certain that's actually a great choice between the sidewalk and the curb is a very small area.
In our street cross-sections, we typically have room between the sidewalk and the property line, right?
Yep.
7 to 8 feet typically. Which offers opportunity for putting black material in our right-of-way, right? So you're just looking for a clear area from the landscaping to the wall of how wide?
4 feet.
4 feet? You could certainly meet our landscape code and achieve that clear area.
Okay.
I mean, there's no conflict there from a design that I can see. There's plenty of room. I mean, these trees, because these trees don't take up that 15-foot area, right?
That is true. Our goal is to limit, and again, just following some general industry guidelines, to limit that height of that vegetation. So vertical treatments like trees end up having canopies. So we're looking for narrow canopies or just short canopy type options. And then we're looking, ideally at smaller, shorter bushes, right? And some green would break up a lot of the brown that's out there in the urban area anyway to help, aesthetically engage that. And so if we're looking for short green bushes that are under a certain size, ideally to also not promote shade, shelter, food for vermin and other things, that's why we're requesting the variance to go to a xeriscape. So we appreciate and support staff's direction and decision, and understand their recommendation to deny it. Our request is just to accept it, but we support staff and the commission's decisions.
So basically what you're saying is just because you have these two wells right here, you don't want to have tall trees because of the birds?
Well, not just because of the birds. Tall trees promotes climbing, the ability to climb up, and promote more shelter for birds, other insects, things like that.
Okay. Because where I live, we have 2 water tanks right off of Cottonwood Lane. Also, Arizona Water is right behind me off of Manor. And you do have plants and vegetation in front that looks nice. So I was just wondering if you could do something like that, like you have off of Manor.
It is possible for us to do. Again, we're asking for the variance to align with some of the overall industry goals, setting the standard for that. And at other facilities that Arizona Water has, there is landscaping that is there, but that is the purpose behind our request is laid out as really safety and security, not for the aesthetic side.
Okay, yes.
And then,
More?
one more question.
Yes.
The trucks will be going in and out off of Overfield, correct?
That is correct. Only one entrance.
So it wouldn't be in a subdivision or anything?
Okay.
I'm good.
Very good. Curiosity question, something was mentioned about the well sites. Are they established wells there? Or that project, you get to drill them?
The wells are sited. They will need to be outfitted and completed.
Okay.
Mark, anything more current or different than that?
No, there's just the old ag well on the side. One will be a replacement, one will be a brand new domestic well that's drilled.
Okay, another curiosity, how deep is the stable water?
We're looking probably bedrock in that area, I would think somewhere between 12 and 1,500 feet.
Ouch. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? All right,
Thank you.
thank you, appreciate it. Applicant's done. Any more? We'll be fine. Very good. Okay, with that, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public like to address this issue? Please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of this meeting. Bring it back to the commission. Discussion, comments, and we have some order to go to, so. First parts are easy, so the first couple, but after that.
It's got it laid out right here.
Let me just ask one question here. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
according to Arizona Water, they are going to be providing some sort of landscaping, not tall landscaping, isn't it? Is that correct?
They're asking for no landscape.
They're asking for
No.
No, the current proposal on that is just rock, no plant material, just rock.
So I have a question, and we may have to address the applicant, but it comes to our process here. When we get down the list, when we get to the major site plan, we have a condition of, as to the Saguaros, is that, can you describe a little more for us about what your plan is for those Saguaros?
So initially, like I said before, we intended to relocate those to your city facility over by the airport, your maintenance facility. And what we would be doing when we kick this project off, one of the first elements probably will be to have the contractor secure the Blue Star permit, like we talked about before, for the removal, safe handling, and then the relocation to their resting spot. And they have to meet all the permit conditions of that Blue Star permit, that environmental permit. So that would probably be one of the first elements we would encounter in the construction of the facility.
Okay, and so to be clear, I'm not clear where those are going. I mean, you just said
Your
a
public
city-
works yard on, what's
The
the?
North Operations Center?
Yeah, North
Lear.
Operations Center.
On Lear Avenue. So let me ask a quick question. Would it be your preference to just locate them into your frontage instead of transporting them all the way up to our North Operations Center? Wouldn't it be cheaper for you just to move them to your frontage?
I think we could make that adjustment. I would assume, I know we made a commitment to the city with Kevin, and I know that could be altered, obviously.
I can cover Kevin.
Yeah, I know you can. I figured he had a deal right here. Yes, we could. Yeah, whatever would be in the best benefit of the project, the visibility, obviously would be what we would be more than willing to do, as long as I don't make Kevin mad and you will take the heat and the bullet for it. Okay. We're willing to adjust. We just wanted a good home for the saguaro. It's a little bit tough in the site planning of, on site where they sit right now. That's all.
But
Okay,
get
we'd
that
be
with-
willing to adjust.
Yeah, get that, and we appreciate your flexibility on
Sure.
that and concern for it. I think we all appreciate that. It's a little bit of a challenge, I think, for us, and maybe we're going to lean on our attorney to address how do we change the language in that condition to address it.
Thank you.
Okay, when we get there, we'll be pointing at you. Let go, brother. Very good. Okay, commissioners, we got a little work to do before we get to talk to the attorney. Any other questions, comments from the commission? Your turn. Somebody's turn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to forward to City Council a recommendation to approve the minor general plan amendment, DSA 22125.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion and a second to approve the minor general plan, DSA 22125. Any discussion? Seeing none, please
Just
call
to make sure that's to forward a recommendation. I think he said it correctly, but you may have
Oh,
just said
I
approve.
messed it up.
Forward.
I was trying to help keep it clear.
I may have missed it, but
Move to forward a recommendation to approve the minor general plan for DSA 22-125. Please call the roll, and I'll show you.
All right. Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes?
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Yes. Very good. Next item,
I'm ready, Mr. Commissioner.
you go, brother.
I want to forward to City Council a recommendation to approve the zone change from UR to R2 for DSA 21-00233, subject to the following condition, that the multifamily development, including multiple principal resident structures on a single lot, is prohibited.
I have a motion.
Second.
He's first.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion, please call the roll.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Yes. Very good. Next.
I got another one, Commissioner.
Go for it.
Move to approve the conditional use permit and associated resolution DSA 21-00234, subject to City Council approval of the minor general plan amendment 00125 and the zone change, which is 00233.
Very good. We have a second?
Second.
Got him? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
This next one through yet.
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Yes. So now this is the 00236 that we're addressing.
Yes.
I'm listening.
23. Which one's next?
No, just, read it up.
Yeah, number 4.
235, right? Oh, no.
The variance?
Oh, we're six. Okay.
236.
Okay.
We switched it
Mr.
around
Commissioner,
on us.
Okay.
And then,
Mr. Commissioner, I move to accept the landscape variation request, DSA 22-00236, as required by city code, in the hopes that we can determine a different way of doing that. Did I say that right?
I'm not sure.
To accept it? I mean, to
The motion,
accept their.
I'm not sure what you,
I'm trying to say that
You want
the
them
staff wants to deny the landscape variation. I want to let them do the landscape variation. Bring
well,
that
it's a
back.
it's,
How do you
just to
say
be
that?
clear, it's a variance from our code requirement.
Correct.
So they're requesting that it just be block, which is a variance from our
rock.
code,
rock.
or rock, I'm sorry, which is a variance from our code requirements.
But didn't they say rock or xeriscape? I thought they said.
No, they're just proposing rock.
Rock.
No plant material. That's their proposal.
So
I'm gonna withdraw
essentially,
that motion
so
then.
if you denied the.
I'm gonna withdraw it.
If you denied the landscape variance, then they're gonna have to meet the landscape code.
Oh, no,
If you,
that's
if
the
you
opposite of what I
approve the
wanted to
land,
do.
yeah, if you approve
That's
the
the
landscape
opposite.
variance.
That's the opposite.
Then
Okay.
they'll get to
do whatever.
have a variance from the landscape code requirement, and we'll be allowed to or to put rock or whatever they're
So I
recommending.
want to move to deny then.
Well, that's up to
That's,
you.
that's the, to allow them, to allow them to do the rock.
No.
No, you said it right the first time.
So I-
If you want to allow them to do the rock, then you're going to approve the landscape
Okay.
variance.
Okay, I'm ready. I make a motion to approve the landscape variance request for DSA 22-00236.
So you just want them to do rock only?
I do.
Do I hear a second? I don't.
Motion dies.
I don't hear a
I did
second.
it quick.
Hearing none, motion dies.
Okay.
Commissioners?
I'd like
back
to make
to
a
you.
motion.
Please.
Move to deny the landscape variance request DSA -22-00236, finding the absence of the street frontage landscaping as required by city code is not in the public interest.
Very good.
Second.
Second. Celeste, you got it? All right. Any discussion? Does it so good, I don't need to restate them. I love these guys. These guys are the best.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Yes. All right, now, the last one that's not last, but we have language coming from our attorney. Should we, you want to read that, or shall we wait till we do the motion and add it in? I don't know how we're,
Right, well, let's have a motion and then we can talk about the conditions.
very good.
All right,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you. It's all over here. Go, brother.
Move to approve the major site plan request, DSA-21-00235, subject to the following conditions set by staff, as written.
Second.
okay, just, so, this is the one with the Saguaros.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I'm just gonna read it like I understand it, just because, and then you guys proceed with the motion if you want, or not. So, the way I have it written is, so it'll say, or relocate them to the property's landscape frontage area, or any other location pursuant to an approved Blue Star permit. It's called Blue Star permit? Okay. So that way they can, they can do anything.
So.
I'm,
Are you ready to read? Yes.
Vice
So
Chairman?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with the Blue Star permit. I'm only familiar with a Department of Ag permit that needs to be applied for. I've moved a few Soros in my lifetime with road projects.
Yeah, and I just wrote Blue Star because that's what they said, but we can change it to say pursuant to
Appropriate
an appropriate.
appropriate
approved
federal
permit.
permits.
Right.
Yeah.
Or are they state? State or federal?
We can just say appropriate approved
Appropriate
permit.
Approved permits, okay.
Yeah.
Got that?
No, but I'm getting.
Okay, I'll read it again. Hold on a second. So, or relocate them. Okay, let me read here. Or relocate them to the property's landscape frontage area or any other location pursuant to an appropriately approved permit.
What's that?
Appropriately approved permit.
Wow. Can I say ditto?
I wish.
What he says.
I'm probably gonna butcher this. Do I need to make an amendment to my motion?
Why don't you restate your motion? Is that all right?
That's- Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Restating the motion to approve the major site plan request DSA-21-00235, subject to the following conditions as stated by staff with, what's that? Saguaros within the frontage area be, cactus, wow, or I can't read my own writing. Cactus landscape or relocated to approved site pursuant by an approval or by approved, what was it?
Or
Permits?
any other location pursuant to an appropriately approved permit.
Yes.
Okay.
That, exactly like that.
Second?
Yeah, second. And also,
So did you say as presented?
As written by staff.
Presented and, yeah.
Okay.
And amended.
And amended, yes.
So we good? Who's the second?
Peters was second.
Somebody
I'll be the
said-
second.
You'll
Estrada
second
and then
this
Peters.
motion. All right, just want to be sure we're seconding which one we're seconding here.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, any more discussion? Comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for working with us. Thank you for working on it, helping us work it out. Continue to appreciate that. All right. Chris, 5 minute?
I concur.
There we go. We will take a 5-minute break.
she is.
Celeste,
Celeste
is that-
There she is. Well, there's her.
She just sent her name.
Like, I'm at home, what are you gonna do about it?
That's what I was just sitting there thinking. I guess I'm gonna start the meeting without her. I hate to do that.
I'm here.
There you go. Very good, okay.
All right, took a break from the headset while you guys took your break.
No worries, just so you're back. Okay, we're all here. We'll reconvene, I guess is the way to say, the meeting. And we're on number 4, holding a public hearing, consider request from ESCA Environmental, Inc. for the following land use approvals for 742 and 812 North Mission Parkway. DSA 220153, conditional use permit and a major site plan of 0065. Guess who's up? Yep.
So if you recall, last month, Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation to approve a PAD amendment to the Casa Grande Regional Shopping Center, otherwise known as the Promenade, allowing a height increase for this site, specifically known as Lot 14, to accommodate a 65-foot tall hotel. City Council did hear this request at its November 21st meeting, and they did approve an amendment at a vote of 6-1. However, it's scheduled for the second reading on December 5th. So tonight, what's in front of you is the next step of the process. Now that the PAD amendment is going through council, the 2 requests in front of Planning Commission this evening is a major site plan consideration for a 145-room, 4-story hotel with conference room space, as well as consideration of a conditional use permit, which is required to allow an off-site parking area, which would accommodate 26 parking spaces off the property. So Lot 14 is the area of the proposed hotel. It lies just east of the existing Wells Fargo Bank. And as you can see, the layout of the proposed site. And the conditional use permit specifically would accommodate an off-site parking area identified just to the north on the lot, to the north of Lot 14. So the reason for the conditional use permit is the required parking for hotels is 1 parking space per room plus 1 parking space per every 6 seats within a public assembly area, with the provision of 145 rooms and 172 planned conference seats would lead to the total requirement of 174 spaces. 149 of those required 174 spaces are being provided on Lot 14 itself. However, they would have a shortfall, if you will, of 25 spaces. And 26 spaces are being proposed on the adjacent property, and that's what requires a conditional use permit, is providing off-site parking for the use. When looking at the specific conditional use requirements to allow an off-site parking lot, these are the 3 considerations. The first is that there has to be reasonable pedestrian and vehicular access from off-site parking facilities to the principal use. So they are proposing a sidewalk that will lead from this off-site parking area to the hotel. And there's also 2 access drives connecting with the drive access that goes east and west between the hotel site and this off-site parking area. The next criteria is that off-site parking facilities shall be located no more than 500 feet from the site of the principal use. The furthest parking spot on the north to the building itself lies at about 230 feet away. So it does comply with that requirement. And then the third thing that we look at is that the site used for meeting the off-site parking shall be under an appropriate legally binding agreement or easement that ensures that parking remains available for the hotel's duration. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So the lot to the north is currently undeveloped. And so they would provide 26 spaces to meet the needs of the hotel site. When this lot goes to develop to the north, let's say it develops as a large restaurant, it would have a parking requirement of 1 parking space per 150 square feet of floor area. So when they go to develop the site, they'll be providing parking, but they would not be able to use 26 or technically 25 spaces of the overall parking lot to meet the restaurant's parking requirement, because these are specifically reserved to meet the hotel's parking. When looking at the consideration of the major site plan, I'm just going to hit on these 3 highlighted items. The first is conformance with zoning. As I mentioned, the PAD was recommended to be approved by Planning Commission at the last month's meeting. City Council did vote to approve it at their first ordinance reading on the 21st. There's the second ordinance read scheduled on the 25th, or excuse me, on the 5th of December. And the amendment did allow for a height increase. There was a maximum height of 45, and it was increased to 65 feet. The next criteria that I want to talk about is the impact of the plan on existing traffic and parking conditions. So there was an original traffic study done when the promenade was developed, and it had envisioned a variety of uses and estimated trips. And there were a number of improvements made at the outset of the development of the promenade to accommodate the anticipated traffic. That's why there's 2 left turn lanes from Florence onto Promenade Way, and that's why there's a traffic signal at both Promenade Way in Florence as well as Mission Parkway in Florence. That original traffic study envisioned uses more intense than a hotel use. Actually, it's been determined that if this site were to develop as retail, it could potentially generate more trips than a 145-room hotel does. But nevertheless, at the time of major site plan consideration, we do take a look at that, and an updated traffic study was provided, and it did conclude that due to changing situations surrounding the site, there would need to be a new left turn lane put into the most easterly access drive at the promenade, as depicted here. And then as other developments occur, not only within the promenade itself, there's some vacant pad sites, and then of course there's vacant development further east of I-10. There'll be additional traffic studies where there's potentially going to be warrants for additional improvements, such as an eventual traffic signal at the intersection of Hacienda and Florence. However, this development didn't trigger that requirement, and namely because people going to stay at the hotel aren't probably coming from the east, they're coming from the west. With regard to building height and elevations, the site plan does comply with the required setbacks of the Casa Grande Regional Shopping Center PAD. For example, the required minimum setback from the building to the north property line 0, they're providing 80 feet. From the south property line, which is parallel to Florence, they'd be required to provide a minimum setback of 65 feet. They're providing a setback of 85. And then, of course, there's ample setbacks to the east and west. The building actually comes in under the approved height through the recent PAD amendment. The PAD amendment allows a maximum height of 65 feet, and to the top of the parapets here, it actually is measuring at 62 feet. With regard to landscaping, a preliminary landscape plan was provided with the major site plan. Should this get approved, ultimately one of their next steps would be to provide a final landscape plan. But on the landscape plan detailed thus far, they are providing 24 36-inch box trees within the landscape frontage area along Florence Boulevard, and there's an additional 20 36-inch box trees planned along the rest of the perimeter. With regard to the notification process, there's been a series of notices starting from well over a year ago, or nearly a year ago, I should say. It feels like it was well over a year ago, but there was notification when the applications were submitted, and then there was a neighborhood meeting scheduled. And as a result, through those processes, there's been a number of comments received by the public. Most recently, we just received one new response as a result of the most recent public notification efforts, and it was expressing opposition. The person who had emailed in was pointing out that the fact that a conditional use permit was needed to accommodate off-site parking was indicative that the building's just too big for the site, and that had been primarily the concern from the past correspondence that we received from Mission Royale residents. It's too big and too tall for the site, and that's proof positive by the fact that they can't even fit all of the parking on the property. However, with the conditional use permit process, it is a function allowed by the city code, and it does allow for simply 25 out of the 174 required spaces to be provided no greater than 230 feet away, as when looking at their proposed plan. So the next steps are, should city council, I'm sorry, let me back up. City council did vote to approve this at its November 21st meeting, as I mentioned. And then the second reading of the ordinance is scheduled for December 5th. So if Planning Commission does recommend approval of the major site plan and the conditional use permit this evening, and if the second ordinance read passes and goes through its 30-day cure period, the applicant can proceed to site development permitting and building permitting. So staff's recommendation is that Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit and its associated resolution. And we also recommend that Planning Commission approve the major site plan, subject to the conditions found within your staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Can you go back to the conditions? Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you, commissioners. Questions for staff? All jump over the horse. Very good. The applicant or their representative, please come forward and give us your name and address. Address the issue.
And my name is Gene Setwinski. I'm the engineer on the project, representing the developer and Marriott. I have not too much to add. I'll answer questions. However, the only thing is the stipulation of having an agreement. There is an agreement in process, has been in process for several months, and agreed to for the off-site parking. The only reason it's been delayed is solidification of the number of spaces, and they agreed to 26 as appropriate. So, and the reason that the off-site is even necessary is not because of the hotel itself. It's because of the conference center in the hotel. And that conference center was a specific, not request, but consideration that was asked for by staff to begin with. So we put the conference center in, and that raised us over the limit.
All right. Did we got your name, did we get an address?
Gene Setwinski, 6044 Michelle Drive in Glendale.
Thank you. Sorry. All right. Any other comments, staff, commission, any questions? All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Now open the public portion of the meeting for this issue. Anybody from the public want to address it? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion and bring it back to commission.
Just one comment that
Absolutely.
with those additional parking spaces that they were able to acquire, I think the only alternative to that may have been a parking garage. Go vertical instead of horizontal, so I'd rather see them do exactly what they did and acquire those 26 additional parking spots. So.
Yep.
So on these parking spots, this other development to the east, so whoever develops this pad over here, will there be something so people don't park in this spot? Like some kind of buffer?
That's a good question, Chairman Benedict and Commissioner Hubbard. So there's a couple of different ways that can be done. Either it could be specially signed, or when the site goes to develop, and I always use the restaurant example just because that tends to be one of the more intense
Right.
amount of parking. Its site plan would have to show how many required parking spaces are needed for that proposed use. And in addition to those spaces, let's say it requires it needs 100, they can't provide just 75 with the argument, oh, we already have 25 spaces on our site. So therefore, we meet it where we're good. We would make them provide their 100 required spaces. Once those 100 spaces are in addition to this existing parking area, the idea is that now that site has a surplus. It has 126 spaces, still meeting both uses' respective parking requirements. So those, if they didn't sign it, the cars can technically park wherever because there's enough parking. And really, when looking at that site, there's probably no one parking space that's further away than the 500-foot limit that would be, the level of tolerance for an off-site parking space.
All right, she's thinking.
Go
ahead, think.
I like, them wanting to put a hotel on the other side of the freeway, because I know we have some on the west side. I'm not in favor of this at all. I think it's too close to the street. I think it's almost like the car wash on Cottonwood, too tall right in that corner. I just feel like it's going to be a distraction. If it was more like behind like Texas Roadhouse, something further back or next door, I could see that. I just feel like if it's too big of a hotel and they're having to go into the land across the street, which is encumbering somebody else who wants to build. Now they won't be able to build because the hotel is taking parking spots. And like you're saying, if they did a garage or something, unless they bought the whole land and did everything, that would make sense.
Can I ask staff a question?
Yeah, by all means.
Would the owner of the parcel to the north of the hotel be able to enter into a shared parking agreement with the hotel to still be able to use those spaces?
Chairman Benedict,
Yes.
Commissioner Alderette, absolutely. In fact, there probably already exists a shared parking agreement among all the lots within the promenade. But the intent behind this conditional use permit is it needs to exceed just the ability to cross-park. We need to ensure that the adequate number of required spaces is available for every use. Right now, it doesn't appear to be as huge of a problem because there's multiple empty pad sites, but, you know, we want the promenade to be successful. And so as each of the pad site has a use, and they have their own required amount of parking, and there's an ability to, you know, park on each other's lots, so you don't have to move your car if you're at PetSmart and you want to go to Kohl's.
Yeah.
You should be able to just leave your
Yeah.
car. But we want that assurance that every use does meet its required parking. So the cross-parking agreement does probably actually already exist. It's just wanting to ensure that as the site develops, every use has its required amount of parking, whether it's on or off-site.
Make sense? You good?
Yeah. I was,
Go ahead.
with that shared parking agreement, would the off-peak hours of the hotel versus whatever use comes into that parcel play a role into whether that exceeding the number of parking spaces or meeting what the staff thinks is necessary for both uses, would those off-peak hours factor into allowing a reduction of parking?
So the city code does recognize there's certain uses that can enter into a joint use agreement with another user for that very situation. Like a church is a great example, because they're not gonna have a parking lot full of people at 1 in the morning, like a bar. Their peak times are, of course, you know, Sundays. And so in those situations, it's, the code allows for some mechanisms without requiring or prompting them to go through a conditional use permit process, because it's understood that there's some symbiosis between a church and like an office building that would never be open on Sundays. But in this case, there really isn't a way to factor that, although, you know, one can rationalize that, sure, you know, the hotel probably is not going to have people coming in at noon because, you know, check-in time isn't usually until 3. And so, you know, there is probably some times where the absence of parking will have some benefit respectively to each other's business, but it's harder to pinpoint because of the unknown
Other use.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Good?
Yep.
Very good. Other comments, other questions from the commission? I think we're at the point, right?
Mr. Vice
How
Chair.
lost am I?
Mr. Vice Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit and its associated resolution DSA-22-153.
Very good. Got a motion?
I second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Celeste, want to hear you? Go ahead, call the roll.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
No.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Yes. All right.
All right,
Next up.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes,
can you
sir.
Move things along here. I make a motion to approve the major site plan DSA-22-00065, subject to the following condition as mentioned by staff in the report,
Or how about as presented?
as
today?
presented.
Today.
Second, as presented.
Very good. All right. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
All right. Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
No.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Yes. Right. Passed. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Next, hold a public hearing, consider forwarding recommendation to the city council to request L&L LLC a zone change for UR to I-1 on Hannah Road and Sunland Gin Road, this DSA 2200222. Jim?
Correct. I have the wrong file number on the screen, so disregard that.
I'm glad I was
Yeah,
ignoring you.
I should have known that because it was fairly easy to remember. It's all twos, 2200222, and here I messed it up. So as everything else is correct, though, it's a request for a zone change from Urban Ranch to I-1. There's actually been a number of zone changes along Hannah Road within the last couple of years. Specifically, this is a 9-acre property along the south side of Hannah. And the request to go to I-1 would align the property with a zoning of I-1 that would be very similar to other zone districts surrounding it. In fact, should this property ultimately be rezoned to I-1, it would be there would be no more residential property designated within the city limits on Hannah Road between I-10 and Sunland Gin. It's kind of the last remaining holdout. As you see, there's I-1 zone property to the east and west as well as to the north. The I-1 zone permits a number of uses as displayed on your screen here. And then there's also certain uses that would be allowed through the approval of a conditional use permit. This photo captures a typical garden and light industrial type development that we would expect to see. And of course, because there's not a specific user in mind right now, should the site ultimately get proposed for development, a major site plan would be submitted for Planning Commission consideration. When looking at zone changes, there's 3 criteria that have to be addressed, and all 3 pertain to compliance and conformance with the city's general plan. This area sits within the commerce and business general plan category. And the first code criteria is that the action's consistent with the general plan. So I-1 is included within the commerce and business general plan category as an appropriate zone district. And then one of the goals is to develop economically competitive regional centers of commercial activity. And one of the action steps found within the general plan is to promote a wider range of uses other than traditional commercial areas, including a blend of commercial and industrial sites. And so, the idea is Hannah Road can become quite an industrial, light industrial campus, and it offers an alternative to commercial development that would be more appropriate directly next to the interstate and interchange. And one of the applicable elements is that community growth should be driven by industrial, corporate office and professional services, etc. And so we feel that it would be appropriate to consider I-1 zoning here. Another criteria that we look at is this rezoning is considered conforming to the general plan so long as it proposes land uses and densities and intensities that is required within the general plan category. So within commerce and business, retail, commercial, or office developments should provide spaces that encourage a sense of place, etc. Again, we don't exactly know how this will develop. It'll likely be truly a light industrial, but we would look at specific conformance criteria at the time of the major site plan. At the time of development, they would have to dedicate 40 feet of additional right-of-way for Hannah Road. And it would ordinarily happen during that time prior to the issuance of building permit. However, a recommended condition is that should the city need that right-of-way prior to the time of building, the owner would convey that 40 feet to the city. And, that might come into play as other properties up and down Hannah develop. It might make sense to get the full right-of-way dedication to accommodate a roadway. The third criteria is that the zone change is considered necessary at this time and it meets the land use needs of the city. So we do consider I-1 appropriate to serve this area of the city. It does have nearby railroad and it's nearby I-10 interchange access. We do have a list of recommended conditions, and primarily it's centered around the highly visible nature of this site within view of the I-10, I-8 interchange. One of the things is this is sort of considered the southern gateway into the city. And so as we're considering industrial zoning designations for that property, we just want to make sure that it is a nice welcoming look as a southern gateway property. And so these conditions are very similar to other conditions of record for the other I-1 sites that have been recently approved to the east and west of the property. I want to specifically talk about the requirement for a 15-foot landscape buffer immediately abutting the zone district's southern boundary. So that would be typical to the type of landscaping that you would get along Hannah, which is another street frontage. We're also just asking that elevations of the closest buildings paralleling and abutting the I-10, I-8 interchange shall be inclusive of architectural embellishments, providing an interest of architecture as opposed to just one type of material in its construction. Regarding the notification process, everything was followed, which is required by code. We also notified the town of Eloy and Pinell County because those are adjacent jurisdictions to this site, and we've not received any comments. Staff does recommend that Planning Commission forward to council a recommendation to approve this zone change. I got the file number right on this one. With the following conditions of record as I've discussed within the staff report and the presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for staff? Jim, I got one pretty good list of conditions added to this particular approval, and you made the comment that these are similar to ones that we had put on other properties along the way. Any chance you've got an idea of what properties they are that we've addressed these?
Sure. So, Chairman Benedict, I'm going to start from west to east. That B4 property, it has B4 CR means conditions of record. That was changed to B4, I think, just earlier in the year. And prior to that being B4, it was actually I-1, and it had, if I remember correctly, no, that might have been Urban Ranch, I apologize, but we changed it to B4 with conditions of record. And then, and it had basically mirrored these same conditions.
Okay.
Actually, there's fewer conditions with this one, and the reason is the city code has now been amended to require things like a screen wall for parking areas visible from a street. That's required now as just a function of development.
Very good.
But at the time that B4 was considered, that was not a code requirement, so that was something extra in that one. The I-1 property was zoned B4 prior to it now being I-1. And that, when it was zoned B4, it had similar conditions of record. When this was zoned to I-1, just to the west here, it was approved with similar conditions. And then the I-1 property to the east, that was also recently done. Its conditions of record may not have been exactly the same because it doesn't have the adjacency to the I-8, I-10 interchange.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Good. All right, would the applicant or their representative like to come forward and address this issue? I don't see anybody jumping up.
Guess not.
Okay. All right, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public like to address this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to the commission. Commissioners.
I knew you were going to. Okay.
I look at you a lot. It doesn't matter.
All right.
You got this.
I can do this. I'd like to forward to the city council a recommendation to approve the zone change request DSA-22-00222 from UR to
I-1.
I-1, thank you, with the following conditions of record.
Okay, I hear that as a motion.
Second.
Peter, second. Very good. Any discussion? Seeing none, can we call the roll?
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
Aye. Very good, passes. Thank you. Next up, 6, hold a public hearing, consider request by Healthy Green Life Corporation for a conditional use permit, allow placement of manufactured home on an urban ranch zoned property at the northeast corner of Ropers and Roca, DSA 22-00218. Or gyms all night, huh?
All right. So the proposal entails the request to place a manufactured home on property that is located within an urban ranch zone. To give you an idea of where this is at, in case you're not familiar with the location, it's in the far southeast part of town at Rough Cut and Ropers. The city of Eloy is just on the other side of Ropers Road, and that's part of the Ropes and Ranch property that's currently undeveloped. The subject site is at the northeast corner, and there actually used to be a manufactured home there. This area was somewhat fairly recently annexed. As you see, there's a lot of development that exists. A lot of that development occurred when it was in the county, including when that prior manufactured home was there, but it has since been removed, and so to place a new manufactured home on that site would have to comply with the city requirements, which is that a conditional use permit is required based on the fact it's zoned urban ranch, where manufactured homes are subject to being granted a CUP. This area, or this orange highlighting indicates all the other manufactured homes in the area. And interestingly, I believe just the property immediately to the east was a product of a new conditional use permit that was issued, I think, in like 2018 through the city. All the other ones are reflective of either RVs or manufactured homes that are existing and placed accordingly when it was in the county. So as I mentioned, this property is urban ranch zoned. It's on a 1.77 acre lot, and the request is to place a manufactured home in the size of 1,600 square feet. This is a copy of their zoning clearance, and it's what approves for the placement of the manufactured home, but the actual permitting is done through the state. However, this zoning clearance application had a number of corrections that were necessary. And so essentially, should Planning Commission approve this conditional use permit, they would need to ultimately have an approved zoning clearance site plan. addressing these 6 items. As part of the process of approving the zoning clearance, they would have to dedicate right-of-way. Currently, both Ropers and Rough Cut adjacent to the site just exist as easements and privately maintained. There would be a 20-foot right-of-way, half-street right-of-way dedication for Rough Cut and 33 feet for Ropers. And that would ultimately be then conveyed to the city for maintenance. And that right-of-way dedication is actually in process, and it's scheduled for city council at an upcoming hearing. When looking at conditional use permits, these are the criteria that have to be addressed. I probably went a little bit too fast, but for the essence of time, primarily the criteria speak to compatibility with surrounding properties. As I mentioned, there is going to be right-of-way dedication, so that will speak to the second criteria with regard to adjacent streets. The fact that there's such a large number of existing manufactured homes and RVs in the area, though, and it's on a 1.7 acre lot, almost 1.8 acres, we feel that the compatibility is present. There are special conditions that staff is recommending, however, in association with this CUP request. We do stipulate that map of dedication I referenced must be recorded prior to occupancy of the manufactured home, and that there be an approved zoning clearance prior to the placement of this home. We are indicating that the property is limited to one single-family dwelling, and then this manufactured home is to be used as a single-family dwelling. We have an added condition that didn't make it into your staff report, and it essentially speaks to the fact that this area is on septic. There's not city sewer service. And so prior to occupancy, the applicant shall provide a copy of the approved Pinal County Health Department septic permit to city planning. With regard to the notification process, the property was noticed for the CUP as is required by city code. There had not been any correspondence received until this afternoon, and we received emails from 3 nearby residents. And I believe that has since been emailed to you, and we do have hard copies that we can distribute if you need that. But the crux of the comments from the nearby residents is that it was felt that the manufactured home will decrease property values, especially if this is rented. There was concern about this ultimately being rented, creating a disturbance and conflicting with surrounding property owners or surrounding properties that are actually owner occupied in the area. The applicant for this is Healthy Green Life, which is the owner of the hay and agricultural business adjacent to this site on the other side of Rough Cut. And so the concern is that this will likely not be owner occupied, but rather serve as housing for employees. And if it's a rental scenario, there's concern about lack of oversight to control the upkeep of the property. There were concerns about the adjacent business, not really germane to this request, but just being that it's from the same owner, the concern is from that person is that they've not been a good neighbor. There's been a lot of litter and tearing up at the privately maintained roadways, and so there's a lack of faith that this owner, by extension, will not keep up this property. And then lastly, there's numerous city code violations, mainly found in Chapter 8, a lot of accumulation of junk on properties throughout this area. And so there's concern that Commission should be mindful when considering an action that will allow this property to develop in a manner that will likely contribute to the existing and prevailing code enforcement issues in the neighborhood. Staff, however, does recommend that Planning Commission approve this CUP and its associated resolution for the placement of a manufactured home with these conditions. And again, the concern about it, how it's going to be used, that's why we're recommending the condition that it's limited to and to be used as a single-family dwelling. We do have the applicant in attendance who can speak to who's planning to occupy the home. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Commissioners, questions for staff?
None.
All right. Would the applicant or their representative like to come forth and address this issue? It's late. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Chris Sorensen for the owner of Gulf Green Light Corporation, 1152 South Rough Cut Drive, Casa Grande. The owner purchased this property over a year ago with the intent when they're here in town, it would be a convenient place for them to have a place to stay. It is a place that they will be.
Can he speak into the microphone?
It might have died.
Did it die?
Oh, there we go.
Hang on, Celeste. We're switching here.
Sorry. Yeah, it went dark for a minute there.
Thank you.
All right, sorry about that.
All right, is that better?
Much.
Okay.
Celeste, you all right?
So
Yes,
anyhow,
I can hear great. Thank you.
the property owner intends to reside there when they're in town, overseeing their operation across the street. It is not going to be a rental. The owners will not be living with any of their employees. It is something that the ownership will be staying in when they're on the property. And then if you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
I got a question. How often are they planning on being there? I mean,
Somebody from the ownership is constantly there.
Okay.
Might not be the
Because
same person, there's several of them.
it sounds like the group next door doesn't think so.
Yes. So somebody is usually out,
Good.
but it's not a rental situation, and employees will not be living there.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yeah, let me go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public like to address this issue, please come forward, state your name. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting. Bring it back to the commission. Questions?
What did we say the business was on?
Hey.
Hey, sorry, thank you.
Hey, yeah. So, the staff's busy with the, I have a question for staff, if they can break off just a second. He can't answer, but.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we have the flap open, we just.
so that description of, that there be, how do I repeat the description? Folks coming in and staying there, management coming in and staying there, does that match what we're about, the requirement that we're about to put on it?
Test.
Yeah.
Great question.
Is it working? So, as we kind of anticipated this question. So when we look at the zoning code, James has a condition that says it's limited to single-family use. So I'm just going to read for you the single-family definition here, and then we can just talk about it a little bit. See, James, was it under single family or family?
Single-family dwelling.
Oh, dwelling, single family probably, huh? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was 1570. 570.
That's why he's a commissioner.
That's okay, it's right here. We got it. Okay. So dwelling, single family, so your condition, single family dwelling. So single family dwelling is a building used for residential occupancy by one family. So that's interesting, right? And then we have another one that's dwelling or family. And family, because by occupancy by one family, right? Yeah, one family. So definition of family is any number of individuals customarily living together as a single housekeeping unit and using common cooking facilities, as distinguished from a group occupying a hotel, motel, club, fraternity, sorority, lodging house, or nursing home. So, if all the people staying in this residential unit are family, and that they kind of commonly live together, they don't have to be actually related, then they meet the definition. So I'm going to say it's kind of a gray area.
It's green, because it's healthy.
So, you know, if it's the owner, that's clear, right? The owner comes, stays there when he's in town. There's no issue with that. I don't know who the other folks that we were referencing might be and what their relationship to the owner might be.
Staff.
Does that help answer the question, or is that just muddy the waters?
So when they're purchasing this manufactured home, how are they purchasing it? Are they getting a loan for it? So what would it be classified under?
I don't believe they'd be getting any financing on it. They typically pay cash for everything that they do.
Okay.
So the folks as you described, if I could ask you one more question, the folks as you described aren't, I mean, they're not necessarily related to each other, and they're not necessarily, they don't normally live together.
I
when they're
don't know
not
that.
at
They could be cousins. I haven't got into that with them. All I know is they pay their bills.
Yeah, okay, that's a good. All right.
Listed as the owner.
So,
The owner.
It'll be
The owner, yeah.
The owner
Of
has
the
to,
business.
and the owner has to be
they'd have to
held
show like
responsible.
insurance.
Yeah.
It would show on the insurance.
Yeah, so they would be responsible to respond to complaints or county issues or city issues, complaints from going to the city.
So would it be very similar to a property that would be used for vacation rental, but not?
If you've got some more lights you can shine on this.
This is not a rental of any sort. You
Well, I'm
might
just
call
seeing
it,
the different families coming in and out to stay for a few days to do the work and then leave.
it's partners within the ownership group that take turns coming out for a few weeks at a time every month. So someone's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, another one will come in and, you know, the partners just rotate, coming to town.
Thank you.
So,
Yes.
to Commissioner Garza's question, the way we interpret the city code requirement for vacation rentals is that as long as that they're used by a family, that the interval of their occupancy doesn't really matter. So they could, as long as this is one group of individuals meeting the definition of family, they could rent it for, you know, 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months. So there's not an interval, but they all have to kind of meet that same definition of family. Now, I can tell
And
you
those,
that that's,
and those are single-family dwelling units as well.
those are single-family dwelling units, yes. Now, I'm going to tell you that that's a little problematic from a code enforcement standpoint, trying to determine, you know, if they meet the definition of family. It's not an easy call. And so the city is actually probably going to be looking into developing a short-term rental ordinance that helps further regulate and clarify that regulation.
Understood. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I get just a quick reflection off the top of my head is, I mean, the conditions that are here, if we can follow those conditions, it addresses, you know, some of the concerns. I think it's going to be, as you've said, it's going to be challenging for the city to enforce those, especially with this description that we've had before us. But I mean, I guess we can pass it with those conditions and,
It's up to him, man.
or not.
Did you close the public? You closed it, right?
Did I close the public portion of the
I don't
meeting? I
remember.
believe so.
I'd like to make a motion.
Let's,
Let me give you one more piece of
Oh, okay.
information
Yeah.
that might be helpful to you in making this decision. So let's say this applicant was just trying to build a stick-built house here, right? Which would not require conditional use, right? Could just build a stick-built residence and use it the same way. We have the same problem, right? So the issue we're talking about really is not necessarily related to the conditional use in a manufactured home. It's really the use of any dwelling unit. So those concerns are a little irrelevant to whether it's a manufactured home or not, in my opinion.
Right, exactly.
Well, look at it. Good? Can I make a motion?
With that being said. Go for it, Tom.
You okay with it?
am I okay?
Can I make?
Buddy, I'm going to be good. A little while, I'm going to be home with a glass of wine. I'm great. One way or another.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit and associated resolution DSA -22-00218 for the placement of a manufactured home at 3308 East Ropers Road, subject to meeting the special conditions and found in the resolution, including that stated by staff as written.
All right, I got a motion.
I'll second it.
Peter seconded. Any more discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Benedict?
I don't like approving something that I think we're not going to be able to enforce. As you say, the conditions, I'll say aye. All right. Thank you. Okay. Now, I will open the floor for the public. Any comments public would like to address this commission? Seeing none, I'll close it and go to reports from the director.
Staff approved administratively 2 landscape plans, as noted in your agenda. We had a Board of Adjustment decision regarding granting of a temporary use permit for some exploratory drilling within what's known as the Legends PAD, 7,000-acre PAD on the west side of the city. City Council considered and approved 4 zone changes that you had recommended approval to them on. And that's all I have to report.
Nice.
All right. Development approach and Commissioners, anything for the good of the order? I'd love to hear a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.